Conti, bella palla per Rebic, Rebic Ibra, Rebic, 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 il tiro, goal!
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the SempreMilan podcast. I'm your host, Ollie Fisher, joined once again by Anthony Torgrud.
Hey guys, glad to be back. Always a fun one. Madison's not here this week. He's getting married this weekend, so he's dealing stuff with that with the missus, but he'll be back, well, maybe not even next week. I don't know his honeymoon plans. Can he have a honeymoon right now?
Probably not, unless he's having one in like South Detroit or something.
I feel like he wouldn't want one.
It wouldn't be my choice, but you know, each to their own.
Yeah.
Also sounds really weird hearing an American say the missus. But
it's an expression the world over.
Yeah, right. That's good news. Everyone in the comments wish Madison a happy wedding. Hopefully it all goes to plan. It got delayed, didn't it? Is that right?
Yeah, I think this is like the third date or something.
Yeah.
Like that.
So third time lucky for Madison, hopefully.
Yeah, they're playing the charm.
I'm delighted to be joined by Richard Hall from the Gentleman Ultra.
Hi guys, thank you for having me on. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to it as well.
Yeah, so we've got a game to preview, a five-a-side between Milan and Inter because there's something like 30 players that have coronavirus now between the two teams. On a serious note, it's not a laughing matter. Italian football's kind of been plunged back into this uncertain situation whereby players are coming down with it in their dozens, it seems. Now, my personal opinion is, for a whole other thing, is that having an international break full of friendlies and full of other quote-unquote meaningless games in the height of a global pandemic is probably not the wisest idea. But we're here. Inter are probably going to be missing about 6 players. Is that right?
Yeah, it seems to be getting worse at the moment because they've also announced that Marcelo Brozovic and Pinamonte will also be missing the game as well.
Me either.
Yeah, so it's when you said five-a-side, I think that's optimistic at the moment. I wrote about this for Football Italia the other week, just talking about the fact of the situation that we've seen it with the likes of Genoa, of course, and other teams having to postpone games. And we understand that, you know, the Italian authorities and the TV companies and the clubs themselves, they want to keep this going. They want to keep the season going, and it's understandable. And the fans want to see it going as well. And there's going to be it's going to be a bit of a silly season because players will be out for the quarantine time and come back in. But there is a limit to when they still go ahead with games. I think they need to, I don't know if they have, but really set a clear guidelines as to how many players can actually be out now. Because I don't think it should get down to the bare bones where you can only, if you can only field 14 players or something along those lines, then it's cancelled. For me, when I wrote that article, it was talking about into sort of strength in depth and saying, with some of the players that are out, often you can have quite a few injuries sometimes, and this is where they still could field a decent team. Even to the point of Monday, I was looking at the Gazzetta dello Sport's predicted lineup and thinking, do you know what? I still think that team could potentially cause a few problems to Milan. But now you look at even, with Brozovic out. Now, don't get me wrong, Pinamonti may not have played a big deal in this game. Regina Anglin probably wouldn't have featured. You look at the likes of Inot Radu, obviously not going to play. But it's frustrating. Then all these players, and this isn't just Inter, it's for everyone, the players have then got to come back. And it's going to take, even if they've been slightly ill, it's going to take something out of them. So, yeah, I'm not 100% sure just right now as into how credible this derby is, which is a horrible thing to say because we all want it to go ahead. But there we are.
Yeah, the first thing for me that I thought was, so you've got two things. You've got, first of all, that both squads, but primarily Inter, are going to be without a number of key performers. As you say, some of them might not feature heavily, but a few of them definitely would. And then obviously we've got, for example, Gabbia out, who would have been fighting with Romagnoli, who we've now got to rush back for that centre-back position. Ibra's coming back from it. Duarte's still out. And, and then there's the whole thing of it being played behind closed doors, pretty much, not in front of a full house. This is going to feel like the weirdest derby that I've ever watched in my lifetime, without a doubt for those reasons. It felt weird when they played that daytime one. I think it was a Saturday daytime one for the Chinese audience when both clubs had the Chinese ownership in 2017-18. And, this is just going to feel 10 times weirder. It's not the showpiece event that Italian football's used to.
Yeah, this one's still an earlier game too. I mean, it's not the early morning game, but usually we'd be like the featured game on a Saturday night. And this
Mhm.
time, I think for me, at least, it's like 9 o'clock in the morning, which is just insane for the Derby, always expected to be like the noon one for me. But yeah, it's interesting because like you said, not everyone's going to be a key feature. However, in a weird season like this with 5 subs, there's a good chance all those players would have come on, at least a little bit. There's a lot of unknowns. Normally you look at form and obviously Milan's in the best form they've been in years, but it doesn't really matter right now. We don't know who's going to come back on our side healthy or at full fitness. You guys don't know who's going to come back. It's really a toss up. And, I gave Juve a lot of crap for continuing their thing with Napoli, but if a situation like that comes up for us, I'll take those 3 points. It's too much for me right now.
Yeah, that's literally just been confirmed. It's expected to be appealed again, but it's 3-0. Not only that, the thing that I didn't know was that apparently the precedent is a 1-point deduction. I thought it was just a 3-0, but they've also hammered them with a 1-point deduction for failure to fulfill a fixture. It's very messy, is all of that. There appears to be no innocent party in it, really, which is going to make it very difficult if it does indeed go to another appeal. But
I understand giving them the 3-0 loss, but the point deduction, I mean,
pointless. Excuse the point.
It's negative points. It's not like it's their fault. They didn't choose to get coronavirus. They're I don't know. I don't like that. That's not cool.
Yeah.
I think in some ways you've got to look at that. And it is, I don't like the moral situation in a sense. For me, if they said if they made the guidelines 100% clear, and they said that if your team is reduced to X amount of players due to the COVID, and I'm talking about players who contracted COVID-19, then this is when you're allowed to forfeit the game. And also we had the situation about the local authorities that wasn't made clear either at first.
Mm-hmm.
All those guidelines are met, and Napoli or any team, Inter for instance, decide not to fulfill a fixture, then that's fine. That's fine. But it's having that guideline, having that that sort of mentality that the Italian bureaucracy doesn't really have, where it makes it clear at the beginning. And you're right. I mean, it will affect this derby. I mean, being behind closed doors has affected many a game, and especially the Milan derby, it will be bad for that reason. Unfortunately, I'm 40, so I remember I used to have Sky B when I was 8 and 9 years old, and I remember a lot of daytime derbies. So they go back really nostalgically in some of my memories, so I'm not too bothered about that, even though it's from UK. But, I mean, at this moment in time, for me, this derby is... Yeah, I think every game of this season's not feeling 100%. There was a journalist in the UK, and his name I can't remember off the top of my head now, but he said that in years to come, when we're all looking back on this, we'll see this as almost like how we saw football in between the war in the UK, 39 to 45, where the games were played shorter seasons, players turned up on different teams, and it doesn't almost count. And I think the point you made before is, why risk the health of so many players or people, not just people who are playing in the pitch, but people around the game, for something that really isn't going to be looked back on and doesn't really count. And it all, I suppose, comes down to money in the end of the day, doesn't it? So,
yeah, it does. It does. I mean, it does feel a bit exhibition. I hadn't thought about it like a between the wars type thing, but that is pretty accurate. It's almost got an asterisk next to it at this point. But yeah, speaking of money, that TV, I've got to get the phrasing right of this because obviously it's a big deal, but I think it's 1.65 billion euro for 10% of a future TV rights holding company that's going to be established for Serie A. So finally, Serie A have kind of done their own project, big picture, which has been branded about over in the UK regarding the Premier League over the last few days. But Serie A have opened up to foreign investment. 15 clubs voted in favour. Milan and Inter both voted in favour. I think Lazio and Napoli were two of the ones that didn't, which is interesting. But basically, this should be like we'll see what happens from now because it's actually an exclusive. It's to get exclusive negotiations to then hopefully develop into something. This could be the first step in us catching up with, the Premier League and other leagues in terms of TV rights deals. Anything that brings more money into the league is good, right?
Yeah, it's like a second renaissance age basically for the league. Hopefully it turns out like the Premier League did, and we're regarded as one of the top leagues in the world. Obviously we are, but most people just say it's Premier League and then nothing at this point. So if we could get up to that level and at least get more fans in, even that would be fantastic.
think it shows a level of progress in some way by the Italian clubs. The improvement we've seen with some of them in Europe. I think even clubs like Atalanta, who captured the imagination of a lot of people, who we've been seeing for years doing this, but and slowly building up, and now caught the eye. But I hate to say this, but when you look at the way that Juventus have marketed themselves and really gone out, and the whole deal with Cristiano Ronaldo, I think does all fit into this. And because it has seen other top players starting to be attracted back to Serie A, and then it is more. And don't get me wrong, I mean, Italy in itself has always been able to market Italy because it's a beautiful country and it's an idyllic backdrop to watch football. But to have the stars there and to have the stadiums filling up a little bit more, well, before all this, it was certainly looking like that. It was really becoming a really good branded product, and that's why we saw the ownerships, as you rightly say, more and more want to invest in it. And now you're getting the deal which we just talked about. There's links before about the deal being struck on Amazon as well, that we may be getting, not Amazon, sorry, Serie A on Netflix. It's all these, and Amazon, all these different areas. So it is positive. And I think as well, one thing to add on that is the stadium laws being sort of repealed and changed, reformed, should I say, not repealed. So that now, you can, I mean, it was ridiculous in the sense of any building that was sort of from 1930 onwards was classed as a listed building. So, yes, okay, Inter would have been fine, and so would have Milan, because, that structure in San Siro, because it was modified in 90, could be knocked down and, building a new stadium, which still pains me a little bit, but I see the point. But, all the rest of the clubs now, like Fiorentina, can now improve that ground. And so there's so many different positives at the moment for me with that. I think it's a real good time for Italian football.
Yeah, it's about time. I mean, Italian football has always appeared to me as someone who's loved it, but from a distance by living in England, obviously, is a very insular kind of thing. The clubs are almost self-governed in that sense, but there's this overhanging thing of legislation from regional level, national level, like you said, preventing stuff like stadium developments, preventing steps forward with TV rights deals. And now, as you say, it seems like there's some coal being shoveled into the fire, and we're starting to make progress, which is all good. So you're mixed on a new stadium, or?
Well, it makes absolute sense, but it breaks my heart at the same time. The whole reason I fell in love with Italian football, like I said, my father didn't like football, and he was doing business in Milan and brought me back an Inter shirt. And from 8 years old, that's what it's been. It was on the Sky B, and then we all know, well, in England it was James Richardson, and it went on from there. So for me, it's always played a massive part of my life. I'm out there many times in the year. Milan's a city that's almost second home, and so to see that stadium, and I've got a little boy now, and I'm just wanting to get him there before it's taken down. But for moving forward and everything, I can say all of that from the heart. But if I then talk about what I've just been talking about, I'm no better than all the Italian bureaucrats who don't want to see change. And for me, the clubs like with the Inter, for AC, you see what Juventus have done. I think Italian football needs 3, Inter, AC, and Juve, to be strong to move forward. And yeah, it could be a fantastic stadium to be. I mean, the facilities around San Siro are just abysmal, and inside
it's bad.
It's terrible, and everything about it is frustrating, but it's brilliant at the same time. So it does need doing, and you look at not just that those clubs that I've just mentioned, but that needs to sort of ricochet down to all levels of Italian football. So yeah, I'm for it, but yeah, I don't like it.
Yeah, heavy-hearted, isn't it? It's literally the best stadium that I've ever been to and probably ever will go to. I'll never forget the moment of getting out of the Metro Stadium and seeing it all lit up the first time I went to a derby. And God, it is going to hurt when it does go, but you've got to move on eventually, I suppose. The benefit, or rather the one small plus, is that they are going to try and preserve a little bit of the structure and do something with it. But
do we have
football's a game of revenues.
New stadium? Is it still 2026 tentatively? Is that when they're shooting for still?
I guess it depends when they break ground, but they said they're now wanting to break ground in 2021 now, whether COVID's affected that. But
right.
I'd be surprised if it took 5 years to build.
Yeah.
So I think they might.
I'm just thinking like one of the final seasons in San Siro is going to be empty. That's just the most depressing thought.
It could be, yeah. And it could be like, yeah.
Well, that's why they're building it at the side of it almost, so they continue to play while it's being constructed. But I think the stadium obviously will be ready first, but I think there'll be a lot of work then to get the rest of the development done. So I think the whole project may take up to 5 years, if not more. But then the actual stadium itself probably would be ready earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a big part of it was, like you said, the area around San Siro is a bit of a shithole, to be honest. And it takes a lot of improving, but they've pledged to improving. I guess that's a big part of why the council finally tentatively given the green light on it. It'll be a massive gentrification project, one that's been needed in that area of the city for a while, and fingers crossed that with the brand spanking new stadium, it sort of marks a new era for the clubs like Juve have seen with their revenue since moving to their new ground. That's the hope. Doesn't always happen that way, especially in these uncertain times, but we'll see. Into this season, are they going to win the Scudetto? Putting you on the spot.
It's so strange because the way they've been building up, I'm very impressed with how they've dealt with Conte in a sense. I thought that the outcry at the back end of last year from Conte was uncalled for in some ways, but there's a lot of off-field problems he's been having, a lot of grief he's been taking, and I like you said, he didn't feel like he had the support from the club. So there was two choices: you walk away from Conte, or you turn around and you say, okay, you back him. And the club have chosen to back him. And whilst it's been hard watching Sandro Tonali turn up at your place, I understand it, because what he's done, I think Inter fans need to just realise this a little bit, because whilst we might want Sandro Tonali there for the future, whilst we might want Kumbala there for the future, Antonio Conte's in charge. And now Antonio Conte at the end didn't care about Juventus because he was talking about his career and how he moves forward. So if he didn't do that, he doesn't give a damn about Inter. It's about Antonio Conte and his career. Now, hopefully that coincides with Inter winning a lot of trophies in the meantime. It's similar to Jose Mourinho. He might, even worse so than Conte, because of his background. So when I looked at it, and I looked at the signings this summer, there was some good, like Hakimi, I was really pleased with. And don't get me wrong, Vidal, Kolarov, it's very uninspiring. But he's bought to win this season. He's bought to win now, and he'll die on his sword. And I think that if he doesn't, I think it was the right thing to do, because with Juventus, we've got a very inexperienced coach. Obviously Pirlo looks like he knows what he wants to do. Whether he can execute that all season, I'm not 100% sure. It's, I think there will be slip-ups and they will learn. So it's the best chance rather than ever. The worst thing that happens to Inter is that they don't win it this season, and they look at it and they think, okay, we've got to get a few players off the wage bill now, and they've got the money to look to the future with a different coach. Whether they can win it again this season, it's so hard. If it was in a normal environment, I would have said yes, definitely, because I think that the fans would have got behind Conte here. I think that the way that Inter are playing, they're very, very offensive. It's looking extremely good to watch, and the fans would have been with them. And I think that Juventus, even while Pirlo's, absolutely demigod over there, the fans would have got on his back at some point if it decided to go wrong. So for me, without that though, it's all a mixture of how many players stay fit now. I mean, Inter have got a big squad. I'm hoping that those players now, like Kolarov, will step up to the plate. Vidal will be able to do that, and we will be able to have a very interchangeable team. But this is, sorry to go on about this, but this is my sort of thing now. I always thought the teams that do well with the teams with the coaches that stayed in place, because there's been no pre-season, no chance to put a philosophy in place. So that's what, and also teams that don't really have too many star players, because there's going to be so many times when people, whether it's COVID or injuries, will contract and move them around. And so I came to the conclusion that actually the best team set up to do that is Atalanta.
I was going to say.
So, yeah. So for me, I don't think I think Inter will be there at the end in the top three, if not top two. But it really depends on injuries. And I know I'm ducking the question there, but I think that it could be one of three.
Yeah, when we do our pre-season predictions, I normally just by default put Juventus down. Took a bit more thought this year, but I put them because I thought that perhaps having an inexperienced coach, whatever, this might be the season to do something like that, because it's going to be so different, because there's not going to be the pressure of crowds or the influence of crowds, however you view it. I also kind of fancy Atalanta now that I've wrapped my head around how the season's going to be. I also understand the people that are saying Inter. I think the best thing for Inter was keeping Conte without a doubt. I think he's a genuinely world-class manager. The problem with him is that he tends to spend a couple of years building things and then he likes to blow them up. He kind of like Spalletti, he has these outbursts in the media that to us as outsiders look entirely counterproductive, but perhaps to Inter fans, they know the politics that are at play behind something like his outburst after the Europa League final. He's basically saying, look, if you want me to stick around, then I want the players that I want. There's going to be no debate on that. And he got the guys that he wanted, as you say. I think Hakimi is a great signing. Watching him against Teo Hernandez on Saturday is going to be such a good battle. I think Vidal's kind of smart as well. Tonali, for me, might sound biased this, but Tonali's the no-brainer in terms of an investment, because he's hopefully going to be with us for 5, 10, maybe more years. But Vidal, in terms of coming from an elite club, knowing what pressure is, not needing that period to grow and develop into a side, I think, like you said, it's win or bust this season. And it's going to be interesting if it's bust, But I don't know. But we'll see. Champions League is a big deal as well, obviously. Champions League. Who did you get in your group again?
Oh, gosh. That's a good shout now.
I can't remember. I remember thinking it's quite a tough one, but
I've completely gone blank.
This is the thing, is that when the Europa League draw came on, I didn't even realise it was the day of the Europa League draw, and I would normally have been ecstatic.
No, it doesn't feel in this circumstance. It does. I had to Google it. So that's terrible. But yeah, it just seemed Mönchengladbach, Shakhtar Donetsk, and Real Madrid. So yeah, that's probably why, because it's a tough one.
Yeah, it's Mönchengladbach, isn't it?
Yeah, Mönchengladbach did really well last season, and I think Mönchengladbach's going to be one of the harder games. I think they're like, when we talk about Atalanta, it's a team that's really well-oiled. And there's no particular star players as such, and they can switch interchange in between. So that'll be tough. Real Madrid, who knows? Depends what they've got problems as well. You've got to think about that. They're not the force that I actually would be a little more worried actually in some respects about the 2 games against Mönchengladbach, because Madrid, by the time you get there, can be absolutely dangerous or completely ineffective. And then Shakhtar Donetsk, I think, are very similar in that sense. It's Inter had experience against him obviously recently, and it wasn't a problem. So that's the one I'm not too concerned about. But yeah, like you say, Champions League, I'm not as it's great to be back in it. It's important, it's for Inter to be competing at that level. But again, it doesn't really. I don't think. How can I put this? Even the run to the Europa League final last season wasn't as it should have been. Does that make sense? It doesn't feel the same. Even though it was the final, it didn't feel like fantastic. It was great, and I'm sure if we'd have won it, it would have, it certainly would have said it counted. But again, it's like we were talking before. I still think I'd put a little asterisk against it.
Yeah, 100%.
And I don't think that asterisk means it was any worse or any harder, any easier. It's just different, and you just got to acknowledge it's a totally different season.
Yeah, that's it, and that's what we're stuck with. It's going to be a weird one on Saturday. It'll still be a good game. It'll still be entertaining spectacle. It's going to be it's going to be Ibra and Çalhanoğlu against Lukaku and Lautaro. There's still going to be plenty of fantastic individual battles in there. Like we said, Hakimi against Teo. We'll have to see how Romagnoli does against your two strikers. I'm never ever confident anymore. It feels like, God, when was it? Was it the 16-17 season was the last time we won a derby. It was the 3-0 game. I was in the Curva Sud for that. That was an amazing night. But since then, we've not had many other good nights in this fixture. So I'm always apprehensive into the quote-unquote home team for this. Not that it really makes a difference with everything how it is at the moment. I'm going to press you for a prediction as a last thing.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with Milan. Really impressive season. I think that you might hate me for this, but when at the end of last season, when there was a chance that Ralph Rangnick was going to come in, I just thought that could be a really exciting project. And I'm saying this in a good way, that for Milan, I really thought, wow, a totally different way of looking at things, different way of recruiting, bringing some young, exciting players into Milan and having them play some really good football. And, I understood why Pioli was kept. I understood that it was a lot of politics as well, with Maldini and everything else. But I didn't find it, again, massively inspiring. But looking at it, the back the way you finished last season, the way you started this season, the business you've done in the summer, like you say, you looked as good as you've been in a long time. And I think that what Pioli's done, I think he's, asked to say, look, you let me stay with this squad, and I will up my level as well as up in the team's level. And I would say now, looking at him, I actually appreciate him more as a coach. So for me, looking at the derby, originally, if it was 2 full squads, I would have thought that maybe the firepower we've got, we just have the edge on there, even though defensively not look brilliant. I think Handanovic is struggling to play out from the back, which I always feel like in some respects Conte as well is sort of, I don't know, just gone into that mindset that we'll score more goals than the opposition at the moment. There's been a change in the way that we have played, but the game against Lazio again was more. I was actually quite pleased against that because we were more defensively sound in that match. So for me, I think obviously we've got quite a few players out, but we've still got a reasonably experienced squad that we can go up against you guys. But I don't think we'll move the ball around as quickly, and I am still a little concerned with that idea of, if it is Kolarov and D'Ambrosio at the back, you're obviously talking at 2 fullbacks trying to fit in. I mean, D'Ambrosio for me has been one of the most outstanding improved players over the last couple of seasons, but long way around really of saying I think we're going to see a draw.
Yeah, I thought that's where it was going.
Yeah, because I just feel like I think the two teams will first approach, as you sort of said, that your confidence is obviously there, but you've not won a derby in a while, and you'll be very conscious of our attacking ability with Hakimi and, like we said, Martinez and Lukaku. But at the same point, we'll be conscious of how you can hit us on the break as well. And I think we see I think both teams will sit back at certain points, will counter-attack at some points. And none of the defences for me look 100%. So I think there'll be goals in it, but I can definitely see a draw.
2-2 or something like that. I've got 2-2 in my mind. That's what first comes to my head. I think it'll be. I hope it's just an entertaining spectacle, because it's one of those fixtures where the eyes of the world are always going to be on it. But for all the things we said, the injuries, the COVID overhanging, the fact that there won't be the usual atmosphere, I suppose, the confidence that we have, but also the every single possible external factor that you can think of just points towards the two teams cancelling each other out in some way. So yeah, I've got a draw.
Yeah, the only thing different that I would say, and I agree with every point made by both of you guys, a draw makes the most sense. We're going on 20 games unbeaten, so I just can't not root for Milan in this, and so I'm going to say 3-2 to Milan. But Lautaro and Lukaku are absolute animals. They're going to do work on us, and there's absolutely going to be goals on both sides, undoubtedly.
It's going to be 0-0 now, 100%.
Yeah, exactly. That's how it goes.
Yeah. Right, that's it. Yeah, I'm conscious of time, so I'll let you go. But thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully get you on later in the season for the return fixture, and things might be a bit more normal. But yeah, I was going to say good luck, but I wouldn't mean it, so I won't.
I think it's going to be a good game. And thanks for having me on here. Do you know what? I've actually missed out on the chance to go for something ridiculous, because if in another season I went, you know what? It's going to be 5-5, I'd have got laughed off. The way things are, who knows? So maybe I should have gone
Put a fiver on it. Put a fiver on it if you feel it's bold. Right. Thank you very much anyway.
Cheers. Thank you.
See you later.
Take care.
So that's the opposition's view. Regardless of everything that we've just said, I'm still pretty nervous about this one, because I think it's going to be used as a barometer or a litmus test of where we're at as a squad. We had some good results in the second half of last season against the two Rome clubs and against Juve. We drew against Napoli and Atalanta, obviously with the injury crisis in the Atalanta game. So we've had plenty of positive results against the big sides under Pioli, but this feels like it would be the biggest mental hurdle that we've overcome yet if we manage to win this game.
Well, and under Pioli last season, this was almost the start of that resurgence. I mean, we obviously went up 2-0 before halftime, but then lost 4-2, and that's got to burn deep into every single player that was on the pitch for that game. They know what they can do, they know what they almost did, and they're going to want to get that back. And without the pressure of the fans, I think there's a good chance that they can. My biggest concern is Zlatan's the one who wants it the most, but is he going to start? Is he going to be 90 minutes fit? There's no way. I don't foresee him playing a full game. I don't even see him starting, to be honest with you. I would be shocked if he made 30, 40 minutes. I would be surprised, but he would be, in my opinion, the deciding factor. If we could get him on, he's got enough drive to push for it.
Now, I'm the same as you. I'm skeptical because all the reports, so Milan News, Sky, etc., are all saying that he's going to start and that he's ready for the game, which is good news. I trust them on that. He's been asymptomatic, which is also good. He's been keeping fit at home, doing personalised workouts.
Did Leao have symptoms?
I don't know, but he was seemingly out for a lot longer. And Duarte tested positive before Zlatan, for example, and he's still testing positive now. So I think it affects different people in different ways.
Yeah, everyone differently. I'm just thinking if Leao had symptoms, he's obviously in his 20s, Zlatan his 40s, and Leao was like 10 minutes fit when he came back. So this is what I mean. Like he may be fit in a relative sense, like he may be ready to start the game. And of course, there's no way that Zlatan, if he's fit, isn't going to ask to start this game. He's going to demand that he starts this game. However, it's another thing being sort of athletically fit and being game fit, with the intense pressing that we play and stuff, to just think that a player, because they've been back in training for 3 or 4 days, is ready to go out and play against one of the best teams in the division with the way that we play, it might be a little bit naive. However, you've got to get a match winner like that out on the pitch somehow. So I don't mind if he only gives us 45 minutes and puts us in a good position. We'll see. It's a bit rubbish not having Rebic, He's still not back either, huh?
Weirdly, the one injury that seemed to be under control was the Rebic one, because it was just a simple elbow dislocation. Popped it back in. There were no complications. He's been undergoing the therapy and stuff, but here we are, and now it looks like he's going to miss the game. However, no excuses. Donnarumma will be in goal, obviously. Got to imagine Calabria will be at right back.
Yeah.
There may be a temptation to play Dalot, but this isn't the game. Dalot.
That's what I was going to ask, though, if we think he's going to even make an appearance. I would imagine so. With 5 substitutes, why not? If we're in a good spot.
Depends. If we're keeping a clean sheet, I would never sub a defender off.
Right.
That's just a principled thing, rather.
But it's going to happen. Like there's just
some energy down that side would be good. It needs to be remembered as well that Dalot can play further up. So let's say we're defending a lead, you bring him on Salamakers. Yeah, exactly. Kier will obviously start. He's been a rock. He's been great so far this season. I like, in the sense, now obviously the way that it's come about is unfortunate because Gabia has COVID and he's probably going to be out for the next couple of games because of just how long it seems to take the period. But I like that we don't have the dilemma of whether to play whether to play Gabia or Romagnoli. We have to play Romagnoli.
If it were up to me, I would have picked Gabia if he didn't have COVID.
See, we were going to talk about this last week, and then I cut it off because I thought it's better for the pre-derby episode. I would have also picked Gabia. You don't drop either of a centre-back pairing that haven't conceded a goal in the first 3 league games of the season, no matter what the standard of opposition was with respect to those teams. But we don't have a choice. We'll play the player who I suppose is better rested. I guess that's one positive, but has more experience. I titled something like, I did a feature saying what our lineup should be, and basically titled it as Romagnoli's redemption, because we know that in derby performances he hasn't always been his best. This is a big chance for him. This is a really big chance for him. These two were an established pairing during the lockdown run, and we shouldn't forget that Romagnoli Kier worked so well as a pairing during our best run of last season. So that hopefully won't change. They can pick up where they left off. But like Lautaro Lukaku,
another thing is we don't know how Romagnoli returns from injury. I mean, this is his first long-term injury he's had with us, at least. So who knows? Mentally, he might not be there. Physically, he might be as fit as can be, but mentally, he might not be ready yet, especially in a game like Inter where he's historically made a lot of mistakes, and it's a big game for us. So that's my biggest concern, is where his mind's at. You know, is he ready? Everyone else was able to grow in that Zlatan mentality. Has he? You know, he's been sitting out.
We'll find out. It's fascinating. I'm probably going to put him down as the one to watch in the preview for that very reason. We'll see where he's at, and we'll see if he's ready to, like I say, pick up from where he left off before the injury. If physically he's fine, I'm hoping that mentally he'll be okay, because he was in a good zone. But it's been a long time. You know, it's been 3 months. He's missed. Could work it out. Probably missed 9 games. I think he's missed in total. Missed the last 3 games of last season, and there's 6 opening this season. And the pre-season preparations as well. That's another thing to factor in. But he goes in because we don't have any other fit centre-backs. Teo at left-back, talking with Richard about how interesting it's going to be with Hakimi being Inter's right wing-back, 2 Real Madrid cast-offs in a way.
I would say Hakimi's probably better in defence than Teo.
I mean, they both pride themselves on what they do going forward, which is
Right.
quite interesting. You know, Hakimi's probably more your stereotypical wing back, but at the same time, that is basically the same role that Teo operates. Just because he's in a back 4, we see his average position being somewhere around about the halfway line a lot of the time. And that's going to be big, because if Teo can seize the momentum early, he'll pin Hakimi back. And that's where the threat is down that side of the pitch. You know, this might bite me on the ass, or cross my fingers when I say it, but I don't see much threat down Inter's left side. Not when they're having to play Kolarov as a centre-back, and they're going to have to crowbar someone in there at left wing-back. I think
D'Ambrosio is what Richard was saying, right?
He's going to be in the back 3. So they're going to have to play Kolarov and D'Ambrosio in the back 3, and De Vrij will be the centre-back, because Bastoni's out and Skriniar's out.
Yeah, if we had a better right wing, that would be just perfect for us. Just perfect.
It should be. Like, I look at that, but this is what it might come down to. I look at that back 3 that they're going to field, and how deep their midfield's going to have to play as a result to protect it. And I think Ibra and Hakan, you know, they've probably got a goal each in them in this game. So please be decisive. Like, this is your moment to come up against a weakened team. Just seize the opportunity. Our back 4 isn't really in peril in quite the same way. You know, we've got Romagnoli thrown in there, but he's an experienced defender. He should be able to cope with this occasion.
You know,
and then Kessie Benacer
might be a good shout for that right wing spot. I mean, he's played against Kolarov. He's played with Kolarov. Like, it might be a good idea.
Where's he played with Kolarov?
He hasn't.
Both Manchester, to be fair.
Yeah,
but yeah, Kolarov left
wrong.
before.
It's early for me still. It's not even 9 a.m. Okay.
Don't worry, mate. I'll let you off. But Kessie and Benacer are going to be the holding mids. You know, those are basically movable at this point. But I like the fact that Kessie is going to be on the left side, and the threat is down there right. He's going to be good neutralising Hakimi. You know, he's going to be very useful in that pocket space. And then Çalhanoğlu is going to be the playmaker, obviously. Ibra's going to be the centre forward. I believe, I think, you know, maybe if Rebic had been fit, we'd have deliberated, but it's going to be Ibra up top. That's what everyone's saying. Left wing and right wing, who are you picking?
Maybe start Liao on left wing. Well, I think you got to save Liao for striker, because Ibra's not going to be full 90, I don't think, but he might demand 90. Man, that's tough.
It is.
Brahim Diaz has got to get on there for sure. For sure, he's got to get on there. So I think he's going to start left wing with Hakan obviously down the middle, and I guess Salamaker's on the right.
That was what I came to as well when I did it. I deliberated for 10 minutes before writing it this morning, basically how we should line up. And I came to the conclusion that Liao is better kept as an impact sub, be it either on the wing if we need a goal or up front if Zlatan's blowing.
We get 5 subs. So, I mean, we're going to change the entire, basically, flow of our team halfway through the game.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you would assume so, yeah. And that's if things are going badly. You know, that's a worst-case scenario. If things are going well, then we just make minor adjustments. I don't mind that 11, if needs be, being absolutely on their ass after 90 minutes, as long as we win this game.
Mhm.
You know, we've got to win this game. Then we can rotate against Celtic. Which
And another
comes
thing
next
is,
Thursday.
Inter have 7 games in the next 22 days now.
They
I
do.
mean,
They're gonna be in a
and
bit.
most of their players aren't even back from international yet. They'll get back tomorrow. So they may not. I mean, obviously, this is the big game, so they're going to want to give it their all for this, but they might have to conserve some energy and suck it up and, take a hit.
Possibly. We'll see. There's going to be all kinds of fascinating stuff that factors in like that. But I think both teams are just going to be like, let's get the win in this game. And, you can dine out on that for a while. But yeah, I think Salamanca's has to be somewhere on either wing, and you play him on his best wing. It gives balance to that right side. While he's not going to give goals and assists, watch him score now, but he's not going to give you bucket loads of goals and assists. He does such an important job shoring up that right side, and you've got to play him on his better side. We've played him on the left and it hasn't worked. So if you're going to play him on the right side, and Samu's just not, he's not at the races so far this season, so you don't start him in a game like this. Then the left side, you between 3 players. You're between, I guess, playing Leao there. He says that he likes being a left winger. Pioli thinks that he should be a winger. With Rebic out, who's a goal threat, everything points towards this should be the game where you play Leao and you tuck him close to Ibra. You get him in and around for those second balls and have Hakan in.
We saw that they work well together when they were second striker.
That's where the temptation comes for me. You can make a case for starting any of these,
Mm-hmm.
but as we said, I think he's going to be too important as that impact substitution. If we need a goal or if we need to reinforce the press.
Here's an idea, and I think I like it less than keeping Leao as an impact sub, but have Leao start left wing, Zlatan up top. Leao's 90 minutes fit. Ibra comes off after 65, 70. Shift Leao, middle, Brahim on the left. But then it's like, Brahim is so fantastic on his feet. Well, that actually might be really good to bring on late when everyone else is tired. And he's full of energy with his tricky little moves. Maybe that's a good call.
The thing about Brahim is you've got to remember as well, he's the only natural replacement we have for Hakan.
That's
so
true.
Let's say something goes wrong, we might have to shift him into that position or bring him on into that position if he doesn't start. He's the only one who can play that role. Now, the guy we haven't mentioned, and I think you're going to dismiss it out of hand, we do have a natural left winger who's very energetic, who's a goal threat, who joined in the summer from a small club in Norway.
Oh my God, how did I forget about him?
So I forgot about him, and a lot of people we got a few comments on the article, or rather I got a few comments, I suppose, saying, don't write off Herger, basically, play him.
Yeah. I don't think he'll start, but
I don't think he's quite had enough time. If he'd have had a couple of
it's too big of a game for him to start. But then again, no crowd. It might be feed him to the wolves, baptism by fire.
Someone did a good reply that was a paragraph basically saying why this is perfect, because we've seen in that game against us in the Europa League, he knows how to play with no fear against teams at San Siro.
Give it to him.
Yeah.
Give him the chance. I like the kid. His dad's a great
kind of on
dude.
the hype train though.
Yeah, I'm so ashamed that I didn't even think about it. The international break, man, it's like
those weird
2 weeks
things
where I don't
mind.
even think about the game. Yeah.
Yeah,
put him in.
Yeah,
JPH, let's go.
I ended up going with Brahim on the left just because he's been with us that bit longer, and also because he's actually probably played, surprisingly, because he did well as attacking midfielder, but in the game against Spezia, but he's played his best football as a left winger. He's very good at getting to the byline, and he's very good at drawing fouls. And if we're going to exploit any particular, we need to pin Hakimi back. But you can also make a case for Leao. You can make a case for Hauge.
I would rather JPH out left, Leao as an impact sub, and Brahim as an impact sub as well. I think that's the wisest.
That would, to be able to bring on Leao and Brahim, if you're D'Ambrosio and Kolarov and you've just about got to the 60-minute mark or whatever and things are going well, you're thinking, oh shit, two quick players who are incredibly tricky and hard to deal with,
and hungry to prove themselves and earn their spot too.
Yeah. Let's see. I've just thought I'm going to put some money on Hauge scoring. But yeah, I want him to do it.
Let's do it.
But as you said, his dad is a lovely, lovely bloke. Right, I guess we'll go for some questions because there's not been much news. That's the only problem with international breaks. Not any games or anything to discuss. International break. England won both games. We beat Wales and we beat Belgium. We beat Belgium with a reserve team, which was pretty good. Have America played?
I don't know.
Good.
I refuse to watch friendlies. I think they ruin football, so I just don't give them any time. Anyway, did you see what Isaac just sent us? A Swedish club, in the Swedish third division, just signed Freddie Adu, that American guy from
the
like
old
a decade and a half ago. Yeah, that.
Yeah, wow. Oh, football
Good
manager.
old ESPN said would be the next Messi, and everyone with a brain said no. And sure enough,
Probably not.
not.
Probably never going to be another.
Yeah.
Oh, that's quite funny. Right, so Richard Saltinis asks, he asked for our thoughts on the financial reports. So for those who haven't seen, basically what happens is your financial year essentially runs up until June of the year that you're in. So in June ended the financial year 2019-20 for us. Now, it takes a few months then on delay for the accounts to be finalised and for them to be presented. But basically, for the 2019-20 financial year, Milan are set to announce, in fact, they've confirmed that we've made our highest ever single year loss of 195 million euros. It was a lot higher than initially predicted. We were predicted to cut it from 146 million in 18-19 to around about 100 million. But obviously, they've blamed various circumstances, mostly COVID, and the effect that that's had on TV revenue, sponsorship and match day revenue. Mm-hmm. Understandable. Other clubs have also recorded pretty high losses. You know, Juve in and around the 100 mil mark, in the 90 something mil. You know, these teams that you view as being incredibly profitable and
I think Inter was at like $250 million in the negative.
Roma are higher than us. You know, Roma, which I was kind of surprised about because you keep hearing how well run they are, and you think of the players that they've sold in recent times. But that's the effect, I guess, for those who have downplayed the effect of not having fans in stadiums on clubs' finances, especially for the big clubs where it makes up a smaller percentage of their overall revenue. Mm-hmm. That's the effect. Clear as day in black and white. We're probably 100 million worse off than what we would have been had we had fans in the stadium. Now, there's no cause for concern because several different places have reported that Elliott have already put in 140 mil, basically, to make sure that everything's still financially healthy, stable. The accounts don't look good, but UEFA have basically already said that there's going to be some leniency on this year because of the massive drops in revenues, which is what financial fair play is based on.
There should be. And revenue. There should be some for last season as well as this season. You know,
until
things are back to normal.
And as you said, the season ahead, they've basically said. So so that's where we're at. Richard asks, what are our thoughts on it? Well, my thoughts are that it was probably to be expected. It's tough. It's a very, very tough time we're in at the moment. Perhaps now as well, people understand why. There was some people saying, where's that 100 million we were going to give Ranić for his transfer window and stuff like that. I think it proves that Maldini was working with a smaller budget than he was given credit for, and he's managed to do some very good things with it. You know, now we can look back and say, holy shit, how did we manage to bring in Raheem Dalot? Okay, yeah, they're on loan, but we've got to pay their wages. Managed to sign Hauger, who's obviously a really impressive talent. Tonali came in. Tatarusanu, who's fixed the backup goalkeeper spot. You know, we've done positive things in the market with what was probably going to be a lot less budget than had been anticipated. The plan hasn't changed, you know, because he just did a really good interview. You'll be able to find it on our website, where he talks about sort of a 4-point blueprint plan for us getting back to the top, which includes we'll continue to use data analysis and try and scope out potential bargains for talented players, whether you think that's right or wrong, in terms of only signing young players. That's a whole nother debate. The stadium issue is a big thing. We've got to drive more sponsorship. It was interesting, but it sounds like the club have a plan and they're sticking to it and they're doing it. And Elliott, they've had their doubters, they've had their critics.
But we've all been one at one point or another.
Absolutely. But for all those, and we've speculated many a time on this podcast that thought that they were literally just ferrying the club over to another ownership group, it doesn't seem that way anymore.
No,
Sky
they seem like they're really here for the long run now. I mean, like you said, they put in 150 million just to make sure things are still looking healthy. And you look at what we did in this window, the project that we have going, the way Gazidis is speaking on things. I mean, it's no secret to them. They knew that we were going to post these record losses. They obviously saw it throughout the year, and I wonder how much that played into not going with Ranić. I wonder if things stayed consistent without coronavirus, would Ranić be here now? You know, would we have made the switch to Pioli on the smaller budget? I wonder how much that played a part into it. But going back to the main topic here, I think Elliott might be maybe not the long run, but they're definitely not here for a year or two to transfer power. You know, they look to be building something, and it doesn't seem like a bad thing. The difference between us right now and Inter right now, like Richard said earlier, they're looking to win immediately. We're building for the future. Well, right now, we're not in a position to compete for the Scudetto. They are, and that's why they could sign 34-year-old Arturo Vidal and know that they could get 1.5, maybe 2 good years out of him. We could sign Tonali and get a couple decent years and then 8 to 10 great years. And that's what we're doing. And that's a better way to run a football club, you know, lower wages, higher ceiling. You don't have that revolving door of
better
players.
for the books as well.
Exactly.
You know?
It's better for the books and no immediate trophies, but we're going to be competing for them real soon. And I think that's credit to Gazidis and how they're running the club.
I think that we've talked about it so many times about there being sort of two roads with which we go down, and they were both basically linked to the stadium project. If it was approved soon, then we might have actually switched ownership groups, because there were pointers that suggested it with the clear out over the last 2 transfer windows, getting the wages off the books, replacing with loans, etc., and the Ranić thing being cancelled. But then there was also the idea of Elliott staying. There were things that fed into that too. For example, it does appear that we're building for the future with the various methods that we're implementing to do with data analysis, with the signings that we're making, focusing on youth. And it makes you wonder if we're just trying to peak for 2-3 years when that new stadium opens, and bang, all of a sudden we're back as the European force that we wanted to be. There's also another big thing that factors in if you look at Milan as a city, in that Elliott have made quite a lot of money through the pandemic. They're in absolutely no bother at all financially. They're just not. They're making profit during this pandemic because it's how they operate. They're a vulture fund, and they're a very good one. So our the strength of our owners is not under question. Inter Sunning are making big losses throughout this, and it was reported by various journalists throughout the window that Inter were not going to be able to go out and make a big splash like they really wanted to after Hakimi arrived. And perhaps that factors into why they chose to go for Vidal on a shorter length deal over Tonali. They didn't end up getting a striker, for example. They were forced to go with Kolarov over signing who knows who else they might have wanted. So yeah, perhaps everything isn't as rosy as it seems on the other half of the city. Whereas for us, we don't really have anything to worry about. Yes, 195 million of losses it doesn't look good. It doesn't generate positive headlines. However, you got to take it with a pinch of salt because those losses have been covered already by Elliott and will continue to be covered. And also, it's almost like money that doesn't exist. It's numbers on a piece of paper. A club like Milan is not going to go bankrupt, especially with all the other problems that are going on. Other clubs making huge losses and that kind of thing.
And not with owners like Elliott, you know.
Exactly. So
because even when a club does go bankrupt, it's either the ownership pays their debts off and they're good to go, or they sell. And Elliott can A, sell to anyone, but B, they could pay off any debt. You know, their coffers are hundreds of billions of dollars deep.
I think Elliott, like you said about probably not long term, but everything points towards medium term as well, because they know the value of the football club is going to go up substantially once we own 50% of a new stadium.
I think the value has gone up, to be honest. I know we're posting record losses, but I think the value of the club overall, at least from the fan perspective, has gone up substantially.
It doesn't. It always amazes me how much of it is linked to on-field performances.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if we have a good season now that coincides with the recent resurgence that we've had, and we get into the Champions League and we get that extra revenue, and all of a sudden we're back on the big stage, we're getting the big TV money, we're getting the big sponsorships. All it takes is one good season, and we're back there. Look at
That's how
Liverpool,
Inter was.
and they
Yeah.
were mid-table in the early part of this decade. Wait, no, last decade. But they were mid-table. They're a mid-table club, and now they're back among the very elite. There are teams that are never going to move. Real Madrid, Barcelona, Man United, Bayern Munich. They're always going to be the juggernauts when it comes to revenue. But what it proves to see other teams get up there is that there's a path back to the top, and I feel pretty confident that
You got to win.
we're tracing the right path. Yeah,
That's
and
always it.
It
You got to
involves
win.
results on the field. But stuff off the field, I mean, the partnership that we announced with, it's not a sponsorship from Google, but a partnership with Google is something new and innovative. It's nice to see. And I don't know, it just seems pretty positive. So despite that figure, the 195 million loss, I think there's still plenty to be optimistic about. And say, Gazidis, he's had a lot of critics, and understandably so, because he appeared a bit divisive at first in the way that he wanted to go about things. However, he has a vision. Elliot have a vision. We'll find out in time if it's the right or wrong one. But we've got to back it until it gives us a reason not to. That's a phrase I've used so many times.
Mm-hmm.
And at the moment, we've got a good reason to back it. So stick with it, I suppose. Right. Have we got any more? We kind of touched on this, but this is a good point because pressure is a big thing, especially in a game like this. From Braxton, since Inter have more players out for the derby than we do, is the pressure on Milan to get the win?
Oh, that's a good question.
I think it is, because I think now bookmakers are weird, but I think this might be a game where, for the first time in a long time, we're the favourites by the bookmakers, because they'll be like, oh God, their form's good. Inter are missing this big list of players. It wouldn't surprise me if they put us as the favourites, and that is usually a good indicator of what the general consensus is.
I think the pressure is on us to win, but at the same time, it's not. You look at it like boxing or something. You know, the champion is always expected to win. Obviously, we're not champions, but the favorite. When they lose, it's massively detrimental. It's huge news. In this situation, it's game 4. You know, we might be the favorites right now, but we lose to a team that it's pretty hard to argue isn't a better team on paper. You know, regardless of their injuries right now or their corona outs, whatever you want to call them, they're the better team on paper. And if we lose, it's not the end of the world, but I think we are expected to win. Yeah,
and I think the injuries and the absentees do factor into it. Perhaps a draw is actually expected. I don't know. I don't like talking about predictions because I never want to jinx anything like that.
It's funny because everyone's favorite game is the Derby. It's honestly my least favorite game because it's just like everything's hit or miss. I know whatever I say on this fucking podcast is going to be wrong, and it's just like I just get slated for a week after it. So
we'll lose 2-0.
Yeah,
there we go. I want to be wrong. So this is from Santi Maria. Thoughts on pausing the league for a couple of weeks to get COVID under control? Now, there's been a big thing about this idea of circuit breaking, where if you stop pretty much everything for 2 weeks, it can actually have a big effect on getting the rate of infection down.
I think it could, but you'd have to do quarantines. You can't just like, okay, go on break, you know, go on holiday. You can't be riding horses in Sweden. You can't be doing all this shit. You can't go to Ibiza, you know, like all the stuff that players would do when they get a break is go on holiday. If we're going to take breaks, we can't do that. It's you still have to train. You still got to show up to training maybe, but like we're not going to have a game. You know, we're not going to travel. That I could see working. And players would get rest, which would be good. Gives the people who are sick time to come back, people who are recovering from injury time to come back, people who are just winded from playing a million games in a month, they get time to come back. So that would be beneficial from the sporting aspect. But I'm not a virologist. I don't know if that's going to improve things or not. I'm just doing what I'm told, and that's stay home. You know?
Yeah, there are probably people who are paid to make those kind of decisions. So I wouldn't want to. I don't like the idea of football stopping for obvious reasons. It'd be bad for traffic. It would be bad for everything
Yeah.
else. And I feel like we've been through it. And when does it stop? I don't know. Part of me, and this might be kind of controversial, is thinking that so many players are getting it now. Is this just kind of getting it out of the way in a wave? And then those are now not risk for the future, if you know what I mean. They've had it, they're over it, and we can just kind of keep moving forward slowly. But it's a risk because
It's tough
you're gambling
because
with
the way that the antibodies work seems to be so different. You know, you hear a million different things. Some people are asymptomatic and then they get over it and they don't have any antibodies, or some have a lot, or some people can recontract it or something, or they had false negatives. I've seen every possible angle to this damn thing in the news that it's like I don't know what's right, what's not anymore. So I don't know. I don't have a good answer for this question.
Final one. This is a bit of a I guess a preemptor for the January transfer window. Comes from Theo Diplas. Dele Alli, would you bring him in?
No. No, I wouldn't. I think he's a good player, but I don't think he's a great player like originally thought.
If Dele Alli can't make it at Tottenham, which is a club that he's been at for so long now, and has already experienced a very, very good patch of form, in which he was an established England international and now can't seemingly get anywhere near, then he ain't going to make it at many other places. You know, he seems to me like a bit of a comfort zone player. So with the wages that he's on, and with,
I mean, he might do better under a Pioli than a Mourinho. Mourinho set him down day one and said, "I don't like you," whereas Pioli would like pat his back, hold his hand, and make him friends.
Give him an ice cream, and
yeah, maybe he could get him into that comfort zone.
Possibly, it is fantasy football kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. The one big rumor is that we actually are, after we had Chloe on last week, we actually are apparently going to go back in for Milenkovic in January. I think it seems a bit, and I know the media will create a lot of stuff so they get clicks, but I think it seems daft to make any judgments on January targets now after a window's just closed. You probably need to give it 8 to 10 games to see where the squad's at and if there are any holes. But
will we even have 8? Yeah, I guess we will, because we're doing 2 a week.
Yeah, certainly at the moment, centre back is still a hole for me. Duarte and Musacchio are not up to it, and probably a deputy striker. As said all along, the ideal would be a striker who can play right wing. That way, we've got a winger who can score goals, or a striker. We've got 2 players who are left wing and can play a striker in Leao and Rebic. We were linked with Briel Embolo from Mönchengladbach, funnily enough, and he's perfect because he can play right wing and he's big, powerful, fast, but can also play striker. Huh?
Did your light die? It's like pitch black in your room now.
Yeah, no, it's actually dark. It is kind of later here. There we go. I've opened the curtain a bit more. Well, it's 6:10 here, and you know what winter's like, or autumn, whatever. But yeah, Briel Embolo would have been great because he can play either on the right wing or up front equally as well. Could be a deputy to Ibra, could also be a goal scoring option on the right. So I think that's the kind of player that we should be looking at if we're going after a forward in the January window. But apart from that, there's not a lot else kicking. So that's it. Yeah, thank you very much for watching, everyone. I've been your host, Ollie Fisher. You can find me on Twitter at Ollie Fisher or at Kilpin Chronicle. Anthony?
That's me. Turkey45 on Twitter. It was a fun episode. Hopefully we do win the Derby, and we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, fingers crossed we're recapping a win. That would be absolutely excellent. In fact, if we do win, make a pledge we're going to drink during next week's episode. And then we'll... Yeah, it's the day before the Celtic game, so we'll preview Celtic and the Roma game next week. Good.
Wow, that's quick.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, thank you very much for watching, everyone. We'll catch you in a week's time.
Andrea Conti, bella palla per Rebic, Ibra, Rebic, il tiro, gol!